Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello,
thank you for
Nate.
having us.
Hello, Alekos. How are you? Thank you for joining us for this Bold, Fun, and Full of Ventures Legends of Lightning Volume 2. We have the hackathon running this month, and it ends in December, so early December. So we're excited that there's a lot of projects going on, building and going forward now. And over 100 makers are on the platform building. So that's very exciting to share. And I wanted to take the time to just ask you to introduce yourselves. Alekos, you're on top. So would you be likely to tell us who you are, where you're coming from, what your background is, how you became a developer, how you went down the rabbit hole, and then we'll have Nate.
Yeah, so okay, a lot of things to say. I'll try to keep it short. So my name is Alekos. I'm a developer. I've been working on Bitcoin since 2017, more or less. Initially, I worked with Giacomo Zucco, BHB Network, then Blockstream. Then I launched a project called BDK, which is a Rust library to make Bitcoin wallet, essentially. And now I kind of reduced my effort there, so I'm still kind of keeping an eye, but I'm not really working on it actively anymore. I'm basically just doing consultancy for a bunch of companies that can, hire me, and I'll do whatever tasks for them. I would also mention I'm one of the co-founders of an hackerspace, like a physical office in Italy, in northern Italy. So we have this place which is like the home for Bitcoiners in a way. So like people come there and go out. Some people work from there. Some people just come in the evening and we just hang out. And this place is called HackBS, which is also the logo you probably saw in the stream presentation. And yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Is it in what city so that people know to go and visit you?
It's called Brescia, kind of unknown, but it's near Milan. So like 35-minute train ride from Milan. So if you're in Milan, you can come visit us very, very conveniently.
Fabulous. Nate.
Hi. Yeah, morning. At least here in the US, it's the morning. Yeah, my name's Nate. I'm a Bitcoiner. My background is just I was a Bitcoiner for a while. In 2017, I decided to start running my own Bitcoin node, and that's where I first got exposed to Linux and started learning Linux because of Bitcoin. And I got into Lightning as soon as Lightning came out, and have been running nodes for a while. And then I got picked up at a company called Voltage, which is it's a Bitcoin development platform. I would argue it's the industry leading Bitcoin development platform and infrastructure provider for those that want to build on Bitcoin using like cloud services. And so I've been teaching folks how to run nodes and manage channels and all that fun Lightning stuff there as the support engineer for over 2 years now.
Yeah, Nate was super helpful when we were launching Torogo's Dev in El Salvador, and they helped us set up nodes for the students. So thank you so much, Nate, for that.
I'm glad that worked out. That's awesome.
It did. It was really helpful. So I have questions for you. Like over 50% of Lightning nodes are with Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Why is that? How do we change that? Is that good or bad?
So should I start again?
Go for it.
Top? I'll go. So I mean, why is that? I guess the answer is just that it's very convenient. So people just want to run a Lightning node. They don't need to buy any hardware. They don't need to have a stable connection. They can just go on Amazon, get a cloud machine, and just install the node there and leave it running there. So it's definitely more convenient and probably easier to maintain over time. Because if you have, let's say, you have your own node at home, I don't know, something breaks down, the power goes out, and you have to kind of keep maintaining it more and more over time. Obviously, that's not a good thing. So it's always a trade-off between how convenient something is and how good or secure something is. So it's not great for the network as a whole entity because it's centralizing a lot of funds. Also, the fact that many payments are processed, maybe even just within the Amazon network, means that Amazon could see where funds are going, how much money each node has, and stuff like that. It's also not good for the individual node runner, I would argue, because you're giving up control of your keys to some other entity that you need to trust. obviously, I don't think Amazon has any interest in stealing people's money. Their business is, keeping the servers running, but it could happen, or I don't know, Amazon could get compromised, and in turn, people could, let's say, the hackers that compromise Amazon could then in turn compromise VMs, individual VMs, and try to steal people's funds. Also, Amazon could be forced by the government to, shut down a node, to seize the funds in a node. So, it's bad for the network as a whole in terms of privacy and resilience of the network. It's bad for individual node runners, but it's convenient. So people just do it because it's convenient, and it takes, they can copy paste a few commands and it's done. While if you want to build your own node, you need to buy hardware, set it up at home, and it's much more complicated.
Yeah, as he was saying, especially for the Lightning Network, being online and turned on, having power going to your node is extremely important. Not only for security, but for just like your reputation on the network and stuff. You don't want your channels to be forced closed because your peers like, whoa, this guy's hasn't been online in 2 weeks. Like let's shut him down. So there's definitely some convenience trade-offs on that. And the 50% number is really interesting to me. I'm not exactly sure how they got that number. I know what you're talking about. Mempool.space has that. I do know. So like at Voltage, we have sort of a proprietary infrastructure mechanism where the client holds this decryption key to their instance. So while their private keys of their Lightning node are still technically on AWS, the bubble around that is encrypted. With that aside, though, you could go into AWS, deploy your infrastructure completely manually on a headless Debian distribution, which is just like command line Linux, or you could use something like Voltage, where we just spool it up for you in a nice little place on the cloud. And so then the question becomes, okay, imagine we don't want any bit like Jeff Bezos, right? I don't want any Bitcoin stuff on my servers anymore. Shut it all down. Okay. Oh no. Okay. So what happens? Like maybe there's no lead up. Maybe there's no it just happens one day, right? So and that's an important thing to consider. I think that those that are running businesses and enterprises on Voltage, which is one of the things that we're really trying to provide for folks, because we don't want to build like a walled garden where it's like you can only use this API or whatever. We want it to be like you have the whole LND API, you have the whole LNbits webhooks, you have everything that you need as if you're running your node at home, right? So yeah, I'm getting on a roll here, even though it's 8 a.m. Okay, so yeah, so if they shut it all down, you still have your seed phrase, you still have your channel backup file, hopefully. If you don't, we actually extract that and save that. That's not a sensitive piece of data, the channel backup file, and it's very small. And if you want to, you could export your entire channel database also and put it into a different server cluster or something like that. So yeah, there's definitely trade-offs as far as like shutting that down and be like, oh no, a good chunk of like the biggest nodes on the network are on like AWS. So what happens then? It's really hard to guess, but I think that the Lightning Network temporarily might have some payment issues if that happened. However, the incentives of those running nodes on the network are to help point that capital towards destinations that it needs to get to. So I think those gaps will get plugged because node runners will be incentivized because they're going to get paid routing fees and stuff to start filling in those gaps that have been those craters in the network that form if something like AWS shuts all the Lightning Network down. So I think that might be a temporary hiccup at worst or at best. But anyway, yeah, that's my spiel on that.
So we had Hannah here from Lightning Labs just a week ago, and she was saying that she had a node on AWS and she got billed like 1,500 because she pressed the wrong button on the AWS platform. It wasn't even like the node, because she's actually very good at running her node. But then she was like hit by a bill that she was like, oh shoot, for not saying other another word. This happened to me, and like it can happen to anybody. So question, is it also like a cost thing, or is it just really convenience? Like, is it really cheaper and more convenient, or just...
If you want to deploy your own infrastructure on AWS completely manually, that still requires technical ability. It's not as easy, arguably even harder than just running an Ubuntu computer or something at home. Like AWS is complicated, but that's why Voltage, uses it, but it hides all that stuff away. Go ahead, Alekos.
No, I actually wanted to go back a little bit before we move on. You mentioned one interesting thing about the channel backups.
Yep.
And so I obviously, I don't mean to shit on Voltage. I'm just trying to argue.
No, go for it.
I want to convince people to run their own node. I think
I do too.
I think Voltage obviously is very needed for the non-technical people essentially. But if you are technical enough and you can run your node, you should. The thing you mentioned about channel backups is that with channel backups you cannot really steal somebody's money, but you could force them to lose all of their money. And the kind of like attack you could do is if you publish an old channel state, then the other peer with which you have a channel can punish you and can claim all of the funds. So if I'm operating some kind of cloud environment, like AWS, for example, and I have access, even if you have fancy setups like the keys are never stored in the server, the keys are always somewhere else, like for example, I don't know, in the smartphone app, and then you have some kind of communication. Still, the fact that these channel backups exist, or the fact that the channel history state exists in the server, means that some malicious entity could publish all their states and force you to lose all of your money. So they cannot steal them, so they don't have economic incentive to do so, I guess, but technically it's still possible. So this is yet another way with which you could lose your money by running a node in the cloud, for example.
But if they publish so you're saying they're publishing the old channel states without, and then that's causing the justice transaction on the other side.
So what I mean is, for example, let's say I'm a cloud provider. I have access to the file system of your instance. I can make a copy of the channel backup now. Wait a couple of days, your channels are going to be updated. So now the backup that I kept away is now like a stale old backup. And now if I publish these transactions, essentially, so if I try, for example, to close the channel by publishing this transaction, that's going to trigger the punishment from the other peer. And the node runner is going to lose all of their money. So, yet another, it's interesting when you mentioned the channel backup thing, this thing kind of popped out in my mind. I was like, oh yeah,
you're right.
You can actually make
there's nuance
people
there.
lose money.
Yeah, that would be a griefing attack for sure. That would be really annoying.
Is it super easy to do that? To attack?
Technically, if you are a cloud provider, you can. Normally when you're a cloud provider, you, in theory, have access to everything in the machine. Then there are some security feature, like for example, Amazon, I think, uses these features that. So basically, they claim they cannot see what's inside of your machine in theory. I'm guessing there are, unless you use like secure HSMs and stuff like that, I guess there are some ways in which they can peek into it in a way, because you don't have any keys yourself. So the data, even if it's encrypted, the keys must be somewhere within Amazon's infrastructure. So they could, the easiest thing they can do is they just take the keys and they use them. But more advanced attacks where you say, okay, then I'm not going to leave the keys there, I'm going to keep the keys somewhere else. Then they could do these kind of things where even without the keys, just with the data that's present in the instance, they could force you to lose your money. So
but
there are
as LND as an example, if I extract the channel.backup file and that's all you have, and I give it to you, can you extract the commit transactions from that and broadcast them? Because I'm not familiar
with LND. Yeah. So I'm not familiar with LND specifically.
It was my understanding that you need your private key in conjunction with your channel backup file to decrypt that channel backup file to get the commit transactions, to broadcast the commit transactions.
Yeah, so if it's encrypted, then yes, you need the keys, but it also depends on how it's encrypted. So for example, I'm guessing they're probably not using asymmetric encryption, because normally a node kind of assumes that you have the keys present in your own node. So if they use, let's say, symmetric encryption, it means that they have the key in the node and then they encrypt the file. But again, if you're a cloud provider, you have access to the instance with the node, you can just take the key from there and decrypt the backup file later on. So, I mean, I guess the way of making it really secure would be the keys are never, ever present in the node. You always have the keys outside. And also you encrypt the backup file with some kind of asymmetric encryption. So you encrypt it just with the public key. You only know the public key and you encrypt it with the public key. And then in this way, only externally with the private key you can decrypt. I don't think that's what they're doing right now. So I think,
Right.
let's say with the current state of things, this could probably be done. Maybe it can be mitigated in a few ways. But again, most people, they just have the keys there directly. So in that case, you can just take the keys and steal the money with that. So this is kind of a next level attack.
Yeah, so for context on this, running a Lightning node, your Lightning node is a hot wallet. Your private keys are there in the software all the time. It's not like a cold storage thing where your keys are never touching something connected to the internet. So that's where something like the Blockstream's Greenlight project is something like, we want to give you a cloud node, but you have the keys at all times, and they've been working on that project for a long time. So those listening might want to look into Greenlight also as an option.
So I have a question for Alekos. Alekos, I've been looking at Gerald Rodriguez. He's doing a Bitcoin node on your phone. Can you tell us a bit about that so that we have context of, like, is it really cool? How is it better or not? And what do you think about that possibility of having the Bitcoin node on your phone? Tell us about that one.
Yeah. So, well, I personally, I've never tried it, but I've seen it used by a bunch of people. I think it's really cool, but I wouldn't use it on my main phone. Basically, so if you have a node running 24/7 on your phone, it's going to consume a lot of your battery, a lot of bandwidth. So, let's say you're working around, it's going to consume data, like mobile data bandwidth. So it's going to, consume all of your data plan, essentially. And especially, I mean, the main thing is the battery, I think. So it would really drain the battery of your phone. So I wouldn't run this on my main smartphone that I carry around. But I think it's pretty cool for older smartphones that you're not using anymore, and you install this app and you can keep this at home. You can keep this plugged in, connected to your Wi-Fi. And it's a nice way of converting an older smartphone that you don't have any use for it anymore into a full node, rather than buying, Raspberry Pi or whatever. So I think it has a cool application. I wouldn't use it on my own phone. It would be very, I think, inconvenient.
There's been a lot of
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, finish.
Okay, I was just going to say, there's been a lot of innovation in the sort of Lightning on mobile space over the last year or so. We have the Phoenix wallet. We have Mutiny, which is it's essentially a node in the browser. So that's pretty cool. And,
which is a Bolt Fun alumni, by the way.
Mm-hmm. And then Zeus, which has always been a remote access app to your own node running somewhere else, has a built-in wallet now on it, where we have this whole what's called an LSP model thing sort of developing, which I think Async basically, has been doing that since the Eclair days, where it's just like you have no channels. It's a node on your phone. You have no channels. You generate an invoice. That invoice intercepts the payment and then opens a channel in real time to your node, so you get the payment. So it sort of helps mask the headache of channel management and stuff, while still being like a non-custodial Lightning solution that will hopefully come close to the convenience level of something like a wallet of Satoshi, which is a complete custodial thing. So it's really cool to see more self-custodial Lightning options come out.
Nate, question for you. What is up with this universal money address and Lightspark? What do you think about this?
So So my personal opinion, I'm not, this isn't Voltage's opinion. Voltage welcomes competition. We love competition. My personal opinion, though, as a Bitcoiner, is that I don't understand what they're trying to build over there really at this point. You go to their website, they're charging $20,000 a month for something, I guess. So I'm not 100% sure. This universal, what did they call it? Money address.
Yes.
It seems to me like they just wrapped KYC Chainalysis over LNURL, which has been around for years now, and is calling it something
Can you
fresh
tell
and
me
new.
what is LNURL? I supposedly know, but I actually don't.
So LNURL is it's a method of interacting with Lightning over standard HTTP internet stuff. Okay, so basically you can use just the general internet to generate invoices, pay invoices, withdraw invoices. And why this is convenient is because the traditional way to get paid on Lightning is the receiver has to generate an invoice and give that to the sender. That could be annoying, right? So what if the receiver just had a static address that they could give the sender or post it somewhere, and then that address is tied to their node. It triggers an invoice generation, sends it to the sender in real time, all behind the scenes, and then they pay the invoice. So that's a real quick high-level way to describe LNURL pay. There's also LNURL withdrawal, which is sort of like a redemption thing where it's like your node can say, if you scan this QR code, you get 1,000 sats from my node. That's sort of like the other way to use it. So yeah, this just sounds like they're just using LNURL, which I think I'm actually 100% sure David Marcus says this is built on top of LNURL. And the idea is that we want something more compliant for the fiat world. We want to connect Lightning to more traditional, fiat
I mean, he's
type
working
stuff.
with enterprise grade like Coinbase and people like that, right? So everybody has been KYC'd by the company, from what I understand. That's why it's not such a big deal, the KYC.
Well, it's not that it's like a big deal or a small deal. It's that it doesn't move Lightning forward in any way. It's just a way to break down the wall to the traditional fiat land. It doesn't help push anything. That's my opinion. It's just,
I would argue it's also a negative in a way, because you're basically creating kind of a closed system which is full KYC. So if we just used LNURL, then you could pay from Coinbase where you're KYC'd, or you could pay from a non-custodian wallet where nobody knows who you are. But then if we all switch to this UMA thing, which I mean, I have no idea what it is actually. I just read, one tweet. I didn't really look into it. So, but it's probably KYC. So now if you kind of convince people to all switch to this new format, then you are forcing people to KYC essentially to use Bitcoin, whether it's Coinbase, whether it's something else. So the nice thing about Lightning is that it's kind of a universal, I mean, not only Lightning, also Bitcoin in general, it's universal. So you could pay, if you want to use custodian services, KYC services, go ahead, you can do it, but you're still kind of connected to the non-KYC payment world in a way. And then if we switch to this thing, then we're creating kind of a closed system. We're just recreating banks essentially, I guess, on Lightning, which I don't know. So it's not only neutral. I think it's kind of a negative, almost an attack in a way that they're trying to push this thing to be the universal. The universal should be Lightning invoices. Then if you want, you can build stuff on top of it, but the universal thing should be invoices, which we already
calling
have.
it universal is very odd. I agree. I agree 100%. I would be very weary.
So it's like an attack to Lightning?
It's just the idea is that it's like poking a hole in the membrane and trying to I don't know, just like the worst case scenario is that this really takes off. And now those of us that are trying to be sovereign Lightning node runners don't have as much access, but in a way though, silver lining, that's kind of a good thing because it sort of incentivizes more Bitcoin circular economies. Like we don't want to play in their field anyway, go do whatever. I'm only going to open up channels to like non-KYC institutions, like whatever. But that's like a terrible thing, regardless.
I mean, I would expect this coming from a non-Bitcoin company. Like if you're a bank and you want to get into Bitcoin somehow, you want to tell your customer, oh, you can hold Bitcoin, you can do Bitcoin stuff with us. I would expect this kind of standard, which is still Bitcoin under the hood, but on top of it, Yeah. So, but the fact that it's coming from a Lightning company, from a Bitcoin company, doesn't really make sense to me. I guess they're just trying to please, big investors, big VCs that they want to see. You're creating your own closed environment. I guess investors normally don't really like when people make open things, because they're investing in a company and the company is making something open for everybody, and so they cannot really monetize it or profit from it. So my guess would be, I don't think they're trying to actively attack Lightning. I didn't want to say that, but it is in some way an attack, and I think it's justified. Probably the reason behind it is probably just pleasing investors, pleasing big enterprise.
I understand that because they work with big enterprises that are already regulated and are required to do KYC. I imagine it's also part of that. But moving on, I wanted to ask you guys, what keeps you up at night? Like, what are the things that are either exciting or worrying that you want to see change or keep going?
That's a really good question. I don't know. Do you want to start? Do you have something?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. Yeah. So my biggest thing I've been pushing lately, and I could think of a couple examples, but I'm happy you asked that, because I really, whatever chance I get, I say what I'm about to say, where we have normal Bitcoiners who maybe dabble in Lightning, whatever, and they're trying to get their friends and family, hey, put 5% of your money in Bitcoin, put 10%, don't put your whole life savings in, just put a little bit. And I take that and I flip it on its head, and I tell those Bitcoiners, why not put 5 to 10% on your own Lightning node and learn how to use Lightning in a sovereign way? Buy a gift card from Bitrefill, learn how this stuff works. It's not hard to open one channel or two channels, and eventually that node is going to grow, and it's going to start routing payments, and it's going to start getting useful for the network. And yeah, your routing fees aren't going to be that much, but we don't know, if the Lightning Network is, God, I hope so, going to be the legit censorship resistant, permissionless financial rails of the future, then we need more smaller to medium sized nodes. We don't need these hubs as much. And I think Bitcoiners will learn a lot, and they'll get a lot from doing that. If they have low time preference and we're looking 10 years out, that node might be extremely valuable to the network, and the fees might be a lot more, and maybe they'll even maybe people will even pay them to open up channels, stuff like that. So I definitely I want to see more Bitcoiners who have the ability, right? I'm not talking about getting, your bartender to start a Lightning node when you tip her for the first time. I'm just saying, if you're already a Bitcoiner, this is the next step. You can't give up yet.
But it's how much is it to have a node? At least $70 a month, or what? What's the cost?
I mean, I'm not even talking about voltage. I'm really just talking get a Raspberry Pi or something, and just kind of learn about it. You could get a $400 or $500 computer, mini computer. That's what I got. I got a mini computer that I run all my Linux stuff on. But you don't have to learn Linux though. You could put a Start 9 OS on, or MyNode or Umbrel or whatever these sort of node in a box type OSs on there too. So if you want to just get your feet wet and open a channel, kind of play with it, Voltage is fine. We have a free trial. Play with it. When you feel comfortable, get all your money off of it. Start your own node at home. I encourage everyone to do that.
I'm gonna maybe kind of reply, or maybe just give my thoughts on what Nate just said, and then answer your original question afterwards. So my thought on the routing node. So what you were saying is, go ahead, start trying opening channels, start trying becoming a routing node. And today you're not going to make a lot of money, but maybe eventually, it will become big and you're going to make big money. I have a bit of a different opinion on that. So, I mean, I agree on the fact that you're not going to make money today. That's for sure.
Not even close. That's why the utility is actually using it to buy stuff. That's the main thing I want people to try to use it for.
Yeah, exactly. So what I would say is, I think running a routing node, obviously, the more routing nodes we have, the better, because we keep the network decentralized. But it's also very risky. Because you're keeping, especially if you want to become kind of a larger node, you need to put a lot of liquidity in. So you're keeping a lot of money on an hot wallet, essentially, or, with keys somewhere always available, exposed to the network. And also, I think it's going to take a lot of effort to manage liquidity, rebalancing liquidity, to protect yourself from spam attacks. So there are a lot of theoretical attacks that you can do on Lightning that you cannot really steal money, but you can maybe lock up liquidity for a period of time. And so you need to provide even more liquidity if you want to effectively route a lot of payments. So my guess is that becoming a routing node eventually will probably be profitable, as you say. But when that's going to happen, it will also kind of become more of an enterprise thing. So one example I have in mind is mining today. It used to be that you could just install Bitcoin Core on your computer and you would be able to mine and make actual money. I think eventually it's going to become like mining today, where you need to invest, in that case, not really in hardware. You're not going to have to buy an ASIC for Lightning, for routing Lightning payments, but still it's going to take so much effort that it's going to somewhat become not necessarily centralized. We still have home miners, but you're going to need a big investment. You're going to need, you're going to need to keep an eye on it constantly. And I don't think the average person can really do that. So yeah, maybe you can do it today, but today you're not going to make money. You're just exposing your funds to potential theft. And when you're actually going to be able to make money, it's probably going to be, you're going to be outclassed by more professional people that do it. So I don't know, I have a bit of I would just say, just use Lightning, as you said, just use Lightning to make payments. I would say don't even try to become a routing node. That's kind of my
I'll tell people that too. Like the normal Bitcoiners, I say just like, how much money do you spend on Amazon a month? $200 to $500, whatever. Okay, once a month, open a channel that's worth $200, and then throughout the month, buy your gift cards or whatever. And then the next month, open up another channel. That way there, you don't have a lot of money on it, but you're slowly getting inbound liquidity. And then that's going to route payments and stuff. And even if the funds get locked up or whatever, it's really not too much at that point. And if you really learn and get confident enough, then maybe you could kind of go nuts and open more channels. But definitely start baby steps. It's a low time preference thing.
So send us a video on how to do that.
I have an article on the Voltage blog called the Low Time Preference Routing Node.
Okay, we'll put it in the chat in a second. So Alex, you were going to tell us what keeps you up at night.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wanted to answer more on the positive, looking at the positive side. So what I'm looking forward to, I would say probably the main thing is async payments. So the idea that I'm not really familiar with the technicality, so I'm not going to go into the technicality. I'm just going to explain it at a high level. The idea is allowing people to receive payments even when they are offline securely. And normally this would be done with the help of some LSP. So Nate was explaining before, you have Lightning service providers. They are these entities that, for example, open a channel with you when you need liquidity. So you can start with an empty wallet and still be able to receive money, because the Lightning service provider will open a channel with you. They say just in time, so just when you need it. And these LSPs could also, with this proposal, with this idea of async payments, they could also kind of receive and hold the payment for you while you're offline. And then when you come back online, you can actually receive it. This is kind of unrelated to node runners. So if you're a node runner, you have a node running 24/7, presumably, so you don't really need this. But in general, looking at the Lightning kind of ecosystem, I think that's really needed, because most people, realistically, they're not going to become node runners, even though they should, even though I think it would be great. Realistically, most people are just going to download an app and use that app. And the app is going to be online 30 seconds every, couple of days, probably. So we need this kind of async payments. Otherwise, we can only pay each other when we're both online, which is a kind of a big limitation of the current system. So I would say, yeah, that's probably the biggest thing in terms of UX that hopefully is going to happen soon at some point.
For those that don't know, there's actually a middle ground here. LND has something called Lightning Node Connect. And Lightning Node Connect allows you to create a permission string that enables custodial wallets on your own node. And you can use something like the Zeus app for this. So for example, say my node has a whole Bitcoin in outbound if you add up all the channels. I can create a custodial instance that uses that node as the liquidity for my friends and family, neighbors, town, whatever, by just giving them 8 words that correspond to their wallet that's running off of my node. So if my node goes offline, their wallet stops working. But it's a cool way to, as they say, Uncle Jim for your friends and family, where yes, you are the custodian of their infrastructure. However, if you rug them or steal their money, they know where to find you and punch you in the face for doing that. So that's pretty cool. A lot of, I don't want to say a
Fedi
lot,
model
but
too, right? The Fedi model, the federation.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So like there's folks at my meetup that I have here in Houston that they use Zeus connected to my own personal node for their liquidity, which is kind of cool.
And is that until they learn how to do it themselves and then they do it, or like, is that like their baby step, or what would you consider it? Or they just don't care?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the
so...
baby step. I encourage everybody to run their own nodes. And if they want to, move their money off, they have the ability to do that. So
thinking about emerging markets, right? I mean, I grew up in South America. All my life, I saw money go up and down and disappear. And suddenly all these, huge amount of bills that no longer work. How do you see this affecting, or how do you personally work to make sure that Bitcoin and Lightning is a valuable option for emerging markets, and we're not just unbanking the banked?
I don't know. I can start, I guess. So, well, I'm not really working on end user products, at least not right now. I would kind of like to start that as well. But so I tend to work more on the what's going on behind the scenes. So like dev tools and stuff like that. But I think what people should try to build is, first of all, easy to use mobile apps, because I know in those countries, people don't have computers, essentially. They don't have laptops, they don't have desktop computers, they just have smartphones, and they are like everywhere. So the main important thing is going to be targeting smartphones. And then ideally non-custodial apps. But as Nate was saying, you could also have this kind of middle ground where local communities could set up their own, Fedi federation, or their own community node, which is kind of shared, and they all share the liquidity. So, I mean, non-custodian would be ideal, but there are costs. So, you have fees to open channels or closed channels. So if you're thinking about really, really poor countries that could potentially adapt. So maybe the main, like the first solution could be semi-custodian, like custodian, but not, you're not asking somebody you don't know to custody your fund. You're asking your friend, your local community to custody your funds for you. That could be a beginning, and then ideally move to non-custodian, so like Phoenix, these kind of wallets. And then, yeah, I think that's like the first steps. Then hopefully Bitcoin will kind of spread and take over by itself.
Nate, regarding the node management, like, what were some of the mistakes that you made in the beginning of how to manage the node, manage liquidity, how many channels you should have, who with, like, what are those angles?
Yeah, so my biggest mistake, and I had a top, if you use the terminal Lightning rankings anyway, I had a top node a few years ago, and I destroyed it. And the reason why was because I learned about, and this isn't Lightning specific, but this is like privacy. Privacy best practices are super important if you care about privacy. If you take a Bitcoin UTXO from a KYC exchange, and at least right now, we have Taproot channels here soon. Hopefully stuff like that helps fix this. But you open up a channel, that exchange knows that what your node is now, and all the public data associated with your Lightning node. So if you care about privacy, using UTXOs that don't have a history of coming from a KYC exchange might be important. So that kind of like threw me for a loop, because I like privacy best practices. So like on-chain privacy is very important for Lightning privacy if you're running your own node from a privacy standpoint. So I could go into a lot of details on that, but put that, I guess, that aside. When you're opening up channels to begin with, there are various metrics that you can look at. Things like how many channels does the node that you're opening to have? What is their connection to the wider network like? But what your goal specifically is also very important. If you want to, some people say, hey, if I'm going to pay bit refill for Amazon gift cards all the time, I'm just going to open up a channel to bit refill. And that's great. A payment will succeed every time you do that. But I like to sort of be at least one hop away of who I'm paying. That's also sort of a privacy thing, but it's also sort of a decentralization thing. Like, if it's hard to route payments to an entity where everybody else is trying to route payments to, stuff like that. It gets pretty advanced when you do that. But like I said at the beginning, though, like, just starting slow, joining communities. Like, there's still the PlebNet community on Telegram who love to answer questions. Voltage has a Discord where we could talk about, beginner stuff. So yeah, it really depends on what you want to do. I did a talk at the Atlanta Bitcoin conference last month that was posted on YouTube the other day called How to Run an Effective Lightning Node. I didn't call it an effective routing node. I called it an effective lightning node, and I did that for a reason. So that might be worth folks checking out too.
Perfect. Alekos, tell us, how would you like to close this session, and what would you like to tell builders that are in the hackathon? Have you been in a hackathon, or what do you think it makes a difference of building in the open source space, and what advice would you give them as they continue on this tournament?
So I've been in a few hackathons. I love hackathons. I love competition. I'm technically in this hackathon as well, although I'm not really doing much myself. So I'm helping out a team. So we kind of formed a team at HackBS, at our hackerspace. And I'm super busy with a bunch of other stuff. So I'm not really able to work a lot on it, but I'm kind of helping them out because they're newer to Bitcoin than me. So they're kind of getting started with Bitcoin. So
you're mentoring them.
Basically like mentoring. Yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of mentoring this team, giving them tips, but I'm not really doing much myself. But yeah, so
you have to learn the hard way.
Yeah. So in terms of tips, I'll say what I try to do normally, which has been pretty effective. So I had a bit of success in the past with hackathons. What I try to do is I don't focus. I try not to focus too much, neither on the UX or on the technical side. I try to do a little bit of everything, because I think many people can make really impressive projects in terms of UX or UI. You have like really cool graphics, really cool animations, but in practice they are very, very easy from a technical standpoint. So let's say, I can take a Lightning node and I can make a really fancy UI that lets you send payments, but ultimately you just made a UI. You haven't really acted on Lightning or Bitcoin or anything like that. On the other end, there are a bunch of people, and I kind of tend to do this myself, that really focus on the technical side. So I maybe will make something super impressive from a technical standpoint, but then the UI sucks, the UX sucks. So it's like a command line program. And this doesn't really impress judges either. So I would say try to focus a little bit on both things. So don't over focus on something specific, because you still want cool UI and stuff to impress judges, but you also want cool functionality, judges want to see that you actually know Lightning, that you understand Lightning, because anybody could make a UI, again, to control a Lightning node without even understanding Lightning. So instead, you should get your hands dirty on the protocol, even if you can. And yeah, I don't remember the initial question.
So understand what you're building, understand what problem you're solving.
Yeah,
and
focus
do both.
on.
Make sure you have a team that has a designer, has a technical person, and
try to form
got it.
Kind of a complete team with multiple different.
And Alekos, who is your team so that we can say hi to them?
I don't think we are signed up yet on the website.
Come on, they have to start posting. Part of the
we don't even have
online. Tell them they have to start posting to show that they're building.
Yeah.
One of the categories for judging is precisely transparency. So they have to be on the platform, showing their GitHub, showing what's happening, and make sure that they sign up ASAP then.
Yeah, no, we just started like last week, sorry. So it's very new, so yeah, I'll go tell them, put pressure on them.
And how about you, Nate? What do you recommend for teams that are participating in this hackathon? Have you participated in a hackathon? And I mean, obviously this is a tournament. It's 2 months. It's not a 3-day thing. So there is a difference.
Yeah, so I haven't directly participated in sort of like code, whatever. I have done some like markdown, whatever, but I'm more of an idea guy on that kind of stuff. So I haven't joined a team or done anything like that. But I have so many friends that when I'm at a conference and that stuff, I always like walking around, seeing what everyone's doing and stuff. So I just want to say, like, try to figure out a problem that you yourself have experienced and see if you could solve it using Lightning in some way. Like, I think a lot of the best projects that ever come out are people just trying to solve problems that they themselves have experienced. And gosh, the idea of just transmitting value, like, at minuscule levels anywhere in the world without any, you could do so much stuff with that. So get creative. You can use, you can make cool stuff like there's the Pleb FM, like cool music type stuff. Like, but I mean, and that idea's already happened. But then you could go the other way, and then there's like Aperture and L402, which is the using Lightning to do like API, per API call, whatever. I don't know. But the point is, there's a whole ton of stuff. So definitely get creative and try to make something fun.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate having you both here, and we look forward to having you on the platform, saying hi to teams, checking out what they're building. If you can mentor them from far away, that'd be amazing. Thank you for being here, both of you. We really appreciate it, and it was very nice to meet you online.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.